Welcome again, everyone, here to this wonderful, beautiful morning for an Easter Sunday, where we celebrate the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. It is that day of the year, as I go through, where, as a pastor, I'm forced to wrestle again up close with why I believe in this resurrection thing and why I think it matters. And I realize that probably a lot of the rest of the year I take it for granted. I just preach on the assumption that there's a resurrection. But today I got to dig into it. I can't avoid it. What's really going on here? And it's always a hard kind of thing to do in a sense, because the resurrection so goes against our modern way of thinking and the way our modern world understands things. I mean, I can just hear the skeptic in the side going, "Dead people don't come back to life. That's superstitious." You know, or I can hear the other cynic going, "They just made up the whole resurrection thing because Jesus was killed and their movement was over, so they invented the resurrection so they could stay in business," or something like that. And I get it. It doesn't feel like a natural thing that follows the natural laws as we understand them. It pushes our understanding a little bit. It makes us rethink things. And so through history, there's been all these people who come up with all these explanations to avoid sounding supernatural. They want to fit in. So what do? Well, there's always been the sort of hoax explanation. That's has been around as long as Jesus has been around, right? And that one's not new. The idea that this was just, invented after the fact. There's also the spirit version. That one actually was fairly popular in the beginning, that it wasn't Jesus who actually died. It was a spirit, like a ghost. I don't know how you pin a ghost to a cross. That seems to bend my understanding of ghosts a lot more than him being back from the dead, but whatever, But the spirit one was there. Then there was another one that he really didn't die, and they killed his brother Brian. But that one's been refuted since the 70s. But then there's also the theory, and then there's also another theory, this one was pretty old, that he didn't actually die, that he just passed out, that they didn't let him hang long enough, and that 3 hours wasn't long enough, and so he just passed out, and they took him down and wrapped him up, and then he woke up again. And I'm like, really? So you got him down from the cross, and you pulled out the nails, and you unwrapped him, and then they let him drop, and then he dropped to the ground, and then you wrapped him up, and then you dragged him across town and shoved him in the cave, and he didn't wake up after any of that. I'm like, I've never slept that sound even in college. So I'm not sure I buy that one. And then there's this one that's been put forth by much more enlightened, scholarly type people, making the argument that there wasn't a resuscitation of a body. Obviously, we know that doesn't happen. That's supernatural. What happened was, after Jesus died, the disciples came together and they had an experience of spirit consciousness, something that helped them to realize how godly Jesus really was and how divine he was. And in their hearts, they realized what a godly, divine message this was and how they must keep it going and how he's alive in spirit in their hearts or something. And again, I hear, you're just ashamed of saying it was the body. You're trying to get rid of that body. It embarrasses you. You're worried that your secular friends are going to laugh at you if you just put your foot down and say there was a body. And so all the different theories, like the whole theory of the realization, it's all just to try to keep things within our understanding of things. And I suppose you can try to do that, but then you have to ask yourself, is that really what the disciples devoted the rest of their lives to? A realization of consciousness, a higher level of spirit? That's what they gave the rest of their lives to, every single one of them. Because if you follow the history, every single one of them did. Every one of those disciples went out there and they preached and they proclaimed, and all but one of them got killed for it. And the one who didn't get killed for it died on an island in exile and slavery. You're going to tell me they did that for a realization? They could just teach a realization. Rome wouldn't have cared about that, you know? I don't buy it. I believe there was a lot of realizing after they saw Jesus, after they met him again, after that body was there in front of them again. Then they realized a lot about what he had said, and it started to make sense. It started to click. The pieces fit together at that point. I do believe there was a lot of that, but it happened because of the body, not instead of the body. It was having him there in person that changed them. Now we know that the resurrected Jesus was different than just being resuscitated, right? It wasn't like God just came down with his giant AED and went boom, 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 and then he woke up. He isn't, a zombie or something. This isn't monkey's paw. And we know that he was different in a lot of ways. But what do we know? We know he was able to talk and walk around with the disciples and converse with them. We know that they also didn't recognize his face when they saw him. Pretty much nobody recognized him by his face. His face had changed, but he could walk and talk. We know Mary Magdalene thought he was the gardener. We know that he boiled and ate fish. I mean, that probably wouldn't have been my first meal when I came back from the dead. If I came back from the dead, I'd be down at Nana's ordering the big spicy burrito. But, hey, Jesus and them, they were fishermen. That was what they did. But he ate food. How does a ghost eat food? Wouldn't you watch it go down? I don't know. We know that he still had wounds on his body. This is an interesting part. He was changed, but yet the wounds were still there. That didn't go away. Even in his glory, God holds on to the marks of suffering. The suffering was never erased, even when he was transformed. We know that he could get into locked rooms, which is what it says in John. It says the disciples were all in the room, and the windows and doors were closed, and Jesus appeared. So, okay, he is the Son of God. Maybe he knows how to pick a lock. But I know guys who can pick a lock, and they don't claim to be God. So Jesus is back. He has a body. He's different, but he's still wounded. So the resurrection is more like a person being transformed and changed into something new, but the parts of yourself that make you yourself, which for a lot of us is the suffering that has built us and made us who we are, that doesn't go away. The marks of the suffering, even if there are no tears. And that's what I would tell the skeptics. I'm not up here to preach about a reanimated corpse. This isn't Weekend at Jesus's. I'm saying he was taken and made into something new. Transformation. Resurrection is transformation. And it doesn't bother me that you don't see this a lot, that I don't run into this every day. It's not my power being put to the test. What is natural for God may not be what we understand natural to be. But that transformed Jesus that they saw, that Jesus, he impacted them in ways that changed their lives. And I think it all made sense to the disciples. That seeing them, it made everything else make sense. It was the key that unlocked it all. They didn't quite know who Jesus was before. Now they do. He wasn't just another prophet. He wasn't just a guy who talked about scriptures. He wasn't just a guy who could do healings. He was the Son of God. And his teachings are good, but it isn't just the goodness of his teachings. Lots of people had teachings. His teachings are good because they are the teachings of the Son of God. And the Son of God is back. He's still alive. And so when I sit down, and I get to thinking about this whole resurrection thing and why I keep wanting to say that it matters so much, it's that still alive part. that I get to. You see, most of us as people, I think we don't like change. I know it's going to shock you. But most of us are not huge on change. It isn't our nature. And I think we kind of evolved that way. If we know what's around us, we feel safer, right? But sometimes we know change is necessary. And in fact, if you're really alive, you are changing. The only things that never change are dead things. And change shouldn't really be something we fear, not by itself, but we kind of do. And part of it we all know is that change involves leaving behind something you know and love, something you're familiar with, something you're comfortable with. And so part of the fear of change is really that sense of fear of grief, of the sadness that you know you're going to have when you let go. So that's part of our fear of change. The other part of change is having to have some trust that the next phase is going to be good. But you can't really predict that because it's the future, right? It's a little out of your hands. And because it's the future, you kind of worry about that. You know, it's leaving what you know to go into what you don't know. And that can be a roll of the dice. And if you listen to that grumpy uncle of yours, who will sit there and he'll tell you, yeah, I tried changing once. I tried leaving town and I got up and everything went wrong and this didn't work and that didn't work. So I just came back and lived in Buckyville. I'm like, okay, good for you, uncle. Not everybody has to move. Buckyville's a great place, right? But I would tend to ask grumpy uncle, so when you left town for a little bit and everything didn't work out right away, did you ever stop and think, maybe I need to give it more time? Maybe I haven't changed enough? Maybe I haven't invested myself enough in the change? Maybe I haven't tried to adapt myself enough? And then he'll just kind of go, But that's the future. And the disciples, now we know the disciples had already taken a big jump to follow Jesus, right? Jesus said, come follow me. He didn't say, this is the program, come follow me. So they already took a leap. They already put their trust in him. They didn't quite know how it ended, even though he tended to tell them. He talked a lot about suffering. I'm not sure they really understood what that meant. And then he died, and that should have been the end of it. And they should have packed up their bags and gone back to Buckyville up north and pulled out the nets. And then something changed again. And that gave them the confidence to go out again, further, more. And what gave them that was seeing Jesus again. That he was alive again, that he was who he was, and that when they knew that, that's when they stepped out and went all around the world. Because they knew they weren't doing it alone. Their lives would change because they had someone with them. And when they changed, they knew that somebody who they were comfortable with, familiar with, who loved them, was going to be present. It was the anchor that made the rest possible. With Jesus alive, they could embrace all that God had planned for them to be. And they could do that without fear. And because they know they were not alone. Amen.